pretty. Look, we're like sparkly fairies.
Sparkles. We brought the sparkles in today. Hi, welcome.
Hey, Des.
Hi, Des.
Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. It's Lisa and Nicole, and we are doing our Wake Up Wednesdays.
That's right. Wake Up Wednesday, how to stay awake in our waking dream.
And today, we're going to dive into the unconscious holding. So let's just start with just what is that? The unconscious holding is, we're all energetic beings, and we exchange energy. Like Nicole and I are definitely exchanging a lot of energy. We're so close to each other right now. But even the guy in the car next to you when you're driving down the road, the people you live with, and forget about people, even just environments that we're in. And we pick up on this stuff, and I call it the unconscious holding because we're unconsciously holding stuff all the time, and we don't really realize that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk today a little bit about how do we actually know what that is, and how do we identify it a little better, and then what do we do as ways and strategies to kind of let go of the stuff that's not ours, and then harness the positive things that actually could add value into our experience in life.
Yeah, exactly. Everything you said was so perfect and so right on about the unconscious holding. I mean, if we're energy and we're in constant, we're vibrating all the time, then we're going to pick up on other subtle vibrations, and it is really going to be unconscious. And then later on in the day, we're going to wonder why we feel exhausted or depleted or all this other energy, and maybe the day was an easy day and we're not really sure why that is. And so it's a good time to perhaps take inventory, which is what we'll get into in a little bit. But first, let's talk about what are the negative unconscious holdings that we can take on from other people.
So I've been doing a lot with stress lately, and stress is one of them, right? Sometimes it's ours and sometimes it's not ours, but we've all been in the room or next to someone where you can just feel that tension, and it's like in the air, and it almost like seeps right into your body, even though it's not your tension. So I feel like stress is a big one, and
definitely
also managing it, right? So looking at it from two perspectives, like how we might be impacting the field, the energetic field, and others, and also how we're being impacted based on all the things, environment, people, and all the things that are around us.
Animals too.
Yeah, definitely.
So another negative energy that we can pick up on from another being that is around us or place that is around us is perceptions. Other people's perceptions, like their negative thinking. We can suddenly start to think that say someone has this negative thought process, and they might not even been saying it out loud, but all of a sudden you have these feelings of negative thoughts about yourself or different negative perceptions about the world, and I don't know, sometimes I'll get like a download in my brain and it's like, that's not even mine. I wouldn't even think something like that. So these kinds of thoughts that are coming into our conscious awareness, thoughts are energy, and so we're constantly picking up on these things. So if you feel like your perception about something has changed in a way that seems like it's not really what you would normally think about or perceive to be, then that could be someone else's thought process, someone else's perception, someone else's negative thought about themselves or the world or their environment.
Yeah, and even just looking at it, looking at that thought like a vibration, like we were just talking, I'm sure it's going to come up again at some point in today's life, but I had a conversation with my dad. It wasn't last night before, but it feeds to all of this because, sometimes we're just talking and he's sharing thoughts, but he's not doing it consciously, and also he doesn't know what's happening over here, right? So that's happening all the time when we're talking to people, when they're talking to us. And then it's like if the attention is being focused on something that is kind of negative, like you were saying, it's like we can look at a day that's raining and we can look at it like a really bad day, or we can see it in a really positive way, like, wow, water is life. And
right. Water for the earth, water for the plants, water for survival, to thrive, whatever it is. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So when you're talking to people, whether it's you or them, whoever's kind of bringing in that negativity, just that negative perspective, or the focus on what's lacking or what's not right, or all of those things.
But then noticing when you leave the situation, if that energy or that vibration, that frequency is still there, that's where we really start to become conscious of the unconscious holding, is when you, because it's really easy to get impacted in the situation, or to be aware rather of how you're being impacted in that situation. But when you leave it, you think, oh, it's no longer in my space, but actually it is. It stays with you until you unconsciously say, that's not what I want in my vibrational field, right?
And I want to add something that we actually didn't talk about earlier, because sometimes we just chat a little before we dive in. But it's also the narrative, right? Because we're all storytellers, and whatever happens throughout our day, we're constantly making stories about, this person looked at me this way, and I'm sure that
the stories, they just go on and on and on.
So, also bringing consciousness to when we're in that space of like storytelling and the narrative. Byron Katie, we've talked about her before. She does the work, and that, I feel like her work is really good at like helping us butcher through really fast.
Yeah.
Is this reality?
Is this true? Yeah.
Interacting with.
Yeah. So what's another? What is another negative energy that we can unconsciously hold on to?
Obligation and responsibility.
Yeah.
How many times do we feel like we are responsible for or obliged to do something? And it's like,
oh gosh, that's a big one.
It's so big.
Because that's not only happening like in your small space, but like everywhere in the world that's happening. That's even happening just through social media.
Right.
Just looking at what people are doing, and maybe they've just did something really big, and they're succeeded in something, and now you feel obligated and responsible to like put the pedal to the metal on your life in some area, When
yeah,
it's not even your time yet, or do you know what I mean? It's like
I do.
Just
think about even just like the idea. I worked in grief for a while, and just when somebody loses somebody that they love, just as somebody that's within their circle, we feel this, rather than it being a gift and a privilege to be for that person and to hold space, it can go into this place of obligation, responsibility. It's an unconscious creeper.
Yeah.
Inner.
Yeah. That's another good example of it, definitely.
So we also talked about
anger.
All the emotions, right? Anger, sadness,
fear, sadness,
jealousy, and fear.
That's very true, because if you think about it, say for instance you're not a jealous person, but then you're around someone who struggles with jealousy and comparing themselves all the time, and then all of a sudden you notice that you're doing that too, and that's not even a way of being that you usually are in your day-to-day and your natural movements in your life. These kinds of energies we really do pick up on sadness. If someone is sad, especially being an empath, like I deeply feel someone's sadness, and then it becomes mine because I feel it, or I think it's mine, and then I really have to check in and say, why am I even feeling sad today? Who was I around? Could this be someone else's energy? And it's very important to do that inventory at the end of the day, or even at the end of a situation, to check in, find out.
It's just the whole checking in is like vitally important.
Yeah.
I even have on my phone 7 times throughout the day. I call them sacred pauses, but they're just alarms. Not that I need one more ding or bing coming out at me, but if I'm gonna have one, that's the one to have.
Yeah, that is the one to have.
And it's literally just to check in, like, remember that you're more than just whatever's happening right now.
Yeah, right. So beautiful. What are some
positive ones that... Oh, wait. We can't go into the positive yet.
Okay.
Because there was a big thing that like showed up in this dive around codependency.
that's a huge part of the unconscious holding. I think that
Yeah.
probably all of us at one point in our lives have been codependent with one or multiple people, and codependency is that or are right now in
and
this
don't
moment.
want to own it.
Totally. I know that I struggled with codependency for a while, and you 100% take on other people's shit.
Yes.
And you choose to in an unconscious way, because what you're wanting to do is save this person that can only save themselves, and so all of their baggage becomes your baggage because of that.
Yeah, and it's almost like this is kind of a shadowy piece of codependency. I think it's like, if we actually even think like, I can save you. Actually, that was a part of our relationship when we first met. We were super codependent.
Yeah.
And and anyway, it's like, you can't save people,
No.
And so if somebody goes into that role, it's like this unconscious archetype. That was the other thing I wanted to bring in today, is those archetypes, those patterns of behavior that live in us. But it's kind of like a God archetype, like, oh, I'm so here that you need me to save you.
Totally. But then I think also the codependent has a desire to feel needed.
Yeah.
And so in this person that needs the help, they get to feel desired and needed because that person needs them in that moment.
Yes.
So there's that too.
So it's been named as codependency, and also right there with that label, it's everywhere, and we don't always want to recognize it and acknowledge it, but that would be an unconscious holding.
Yes. And that's a big one.
Yeah.
Okay, now we'll move into a little bit more lighter, positive energies that we can pick up on. So I think one is hope. Hope is a really good one.
Hope
that
is...
we can draw energy from others,
Yes. Like, I feel like that's an unconscious holding sometimes. It's like, we don't necessarily acknowledge and give its presence the recognition that it deserves, because it's like unconsciously there, but then when it's not, we really feel it, don't we?
Yeah, it's so true. And that's why we really do need to bring awareness to the polarities of energies that exist within us, so that we can experience truly the joy and the bliss that comes in. Because if we're only really deeply experiencing the negative, then there's no room for that positive to have space for it.
Yeah, hope is kind of like paves the way. And then joy, as you were saying, like thinking about like the things that unconsciously invite in joy. Like when I'm around babies, like, and I mean
or
babies
puppies or kitties
or puppies or animals. We were just in Sedona.
Food,
like how much joy,
earth, energy,
was that? Like just connecting to the earth. So it's like we can cultivate more joy in our lives by being more conscious about unconsciously how we can invite it in.
Right, totally.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Go ahead.
I think values and belief systems is something that we unconsciously hold on to, but in a positive way. So values can be passed down from our families or from friends or from our communities, and perhaps they weren't our values or belief systems at one point, but now are. And again, it can be an unconscious thing that this has changed into your belief system or your value, but is also adding, positive aspects to your life, into all of your situations and relationships.
And one way to look at that also could be like, if we would go back to negative just for a minute, the programming that's so unconscious in our realities. And then we're back to positive. The fact that we can actually reprogram, right? Just by bringing consciousness more to our process throughout the day. The waking dream.
That's really what it continues to come down to, is really trying to stay awake as many hours of the day as you can to understand what's happening in here, right? Because we cannot control what's happening out here. It's a very simple law of living on the earth, but it's something that we forget, and so it's just a constant reminder to keep coming back.
And it feels like, speaking about polarities, it's almost like you can go down the list and see it on both ends, because again, perspective also shows up in the positive thing, right? So if you're around people that give you perspective that's empowering and positive, like, that's gonna affect you, and you're gonna unconsciously hold those new lenses,
Yes.
those new rose lenses, so to speak, of possibility, maybe.
Love that.
And the more you're conscious about that, the more you can integrate it into your life.
Yeah, and another thing is inspiration. We unconsciously get inspired. It's like something we saw on social media, or just taking a walk, or being around a person that's doing something creative in their lives, or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden we're inspired, and we're not even consciously aware of where that came from. And I think it's important to understand where that inspiration comes from. Ultimately, it comes from spirit and source, but whatever that spirit or source is putting in front of you in that moment that you're getting inspired by, if we're consciously aware of it, we can offer it gratitude and thanks for coming into our lives so that we can also be inspired.
Totally. And then, this is a little bit in alignment with hope, but I think like our dreams, like our unconscious, I need to upgrade my technology. My dream to have an upgraded iPhone. No, but just of our dreams, right? So as we're holding those dreams, as we're allowing them space in our world, we're holding it. That's an unconscious holding. It inspires us. It gives us hope, and it motivates.
And so I just want to say one thing about dreams. It's because our dreams can be a positive unconscious holding and a negative unconscious holding, because the dreams that we might be seeking might not actually be ours, and they might be actually causing us more stress and pain and suffering in our lives. And so looking at, is this dream mine? And then there's obviously other dreams that might be inspired by other people that, like, oh yeah, I do want that in my life as well. And so noticing again where the unconscious dream has come from, bring it into the conscious mind, and then feed the dream that truly is yours when you're consciously awake in that moment of understanding where that dream comes from.
It reminds me of that story, I'm sure many have heard of, about the wolves. And which wolf
that's a good
are
one.
you
It's
feeding?
It's a Cherokee story. Yeah, that's a good one, because they both actually need to be fed. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation.
So should we wrap it up with some tips and tricks on how to stay more conscious? So bringing in
the body. Always the body.
Always the body.
I always say the soul speaks through the body and the ego speaks through the mind. So when you truly want to drop into what is actually there, it's the body that's going to give you those messages.
Yeah. It's going to let you know that it's worth a little more exploration.
Yeah.
Asking more questions, right? Because when you feel it and you're able to start to really learn how it feels in your body, the emotion, even connecting it to where in the body it is, then you can ask yourself, is this mine? Whose is this? What is this? Where is it coming from?
It's the whole of taking inventory. When you leave the situation, at the end of the day, when you notice a sensation in your physical body, taking inventory. Is this internal? Is it external? Is it mine? Is it not mine? Where is it coming from if it's not mine? Does it add value to my life? Does it not add value to my life? And so we can become conscious of what's there.
Yeah, and I would even say connecting to what is internal and what is external at the same time, because they're affecting each other, right? So, but in that moment, we now have a choice. We have the opportunity to make a different choice.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Choice. I love that word. It's such a good word.
Yeah. And then that makes us more responsive to life rather than reactive to life, which is always a good place to be.
Always. We try to be there as often as we can.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are some ways that we unconsciously hold, or that what is it, the unconscious holding. We hope that this added some value to your life, and if you have any other topics that you'd like to hear us talk about on Wake Up Wednesdays, we will be on mine in just a couple of weeks speaking about something we don't really know yet. But we hope that this was helpful to you, and we hope that the daily or the Wake Up Wednesday tips are working for you.
We hope you're waking up. Because we're trying to wake up.
We're trying, for sure. Lots of love to you all. We'll see you next time.
Have the best day ever.